William Conti in California. It's wonderful to meet you, and we have a great tradition of finding people who have very interesting background and very interesting lives who want to incorporate that into the world of Angelina Jordan. And as soon as I realized your background, I had all sorts of red flashing lights telling me that we need to get William onto our podcast because not only you a Jungian psychoanalyst, but you also, in your time, had been a Catholic priest. And so you have a very interesting background. And we want to hear how all of that merges with your appreciation of Angelina Jordan. So tell us about your background.
Sure. I went into the seminary after high school to study for the diocesan priesthood in Pennsylvania, where I grew up. And after so many years of doing that, I felt that I had foreclosed the options in my life and awareness of who I was too early. So I left the seminary and I just went out into the world and was working and doing other things. And after doing that for a few years, then I felt the other side of it was that had I given the priesthood and that calling sufficient shift. I had some friends from the seminary who had joined an order in New Mexico, and they were all therapists and psychologists because the order operated treatment centers for priests and other religious who were alcoholic, who had other mental health issues. So I went out there and visited them, and I decided to join that order, which was very exciting. And it was during that time that I became a therapist. So while I was doing that and helping to serve the brothers and the clients who came to us, and there I was a youth minister in that parish for a year, I decided to leave that order, worked as a therapist for some various agencies, and then eventually opened my own private practice. In West Hollywood, we live part of the year in Palm Springs, California, and part of the year in Hawaii. So a good part of my practice was in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Cool. Because we have another big Angie fan. Yeah, Chris Walker is a huge Angelina fan, so he's also in
Oh,
Hawaii.
so after several years of practicing as a therapist, I decided to get my PhD in clinical psychology. And my master's program was very Freudian, psychoanalytically oriented. But I was not surprisingly attracted to the kind of psycho-spiritual flavor orientation of Jung. The only accredited doctoral program in the United States was Pacifica Graduate Institute in Carpinteria, California. So I went there for 5 years to work on my doctorate. That was, for me, more like an ongoing spiritual retreat than just an academic endeavor. So it just opened up this whole other way of taking in reality. So not just taking in psychology or religion, but just flick into another way of experiencing things. So it's become a way of looking at life.
Wasn't it Jung studying under Freud? He was one of his pupils, wasn't he?
That's right. He was. They were part of the groups of doctors in Europe at the time who invented psychology.
William, you used a very, very interesting word, which I'm not sure I've heard before. You used the word psychospiritual. And that really is almost like the essence of where we want to take this episode to, because the meeting of the psychological and the spiritual is very, very rich. And we want to hear your spin on that. We want to hear how those two merge together and how you experience them personally in your life. And also, if you want to then relate it to Angelina Jordan, that will also be the direction that we're going.
One of our mentors, Dr. Lionel Corbett, who was British, he wrote a book, The Religious Function of the Psyche. So he contends that the word religion is a loaded word, and probably no two people out of the 6 billion people on this earth completely have the same associations come up in their mind when they hear that word. Like, for instance, is there a way that music can evoke a spiritual experience? And my answer to that is that almost any sound or vibration is capable of creating what we sometimes call a trance state, where just hearing it creates a vibration in the psyche and in the brain that clicks us from the state we were in before we heard it into another state.
William, the way I understand it is that music may be in its own category with what it can stimulate. Do you have that sense? And if so, why would that be?
My life partner is a Buddhist meditation teacher, and he has meditation and chanting groups, Buddhist and Taoist. He always tells the story of this experiment where they took 2 bottles of water. They put one bottle on the street for 2 hours, and they put the other bottle in the temple where the monks have been chanting for the last 2 hours. And then they look at the molecules through an electron microscope, and the molecules in the water on the street are all haphazard and chaotic and broken. And then the ones from the temple are like beautiful flowers. Apparently, the vibration of that chanting specifically creates this reaction in the body, which is made up of, like, what is it, 80% water. But also with the neuroimaging that we have today, we can show that it lights up at different parts of the brain too. So if you want to, like, doubt any effect, like psychospiritually, you can use the body and show, well, look at the changes that it's causing here compared to other stimuli.
The first episode we did, there was another image that Alan came up with, and that was ripples in the pond.
That image, actually, I stole from this old Chinese doctor I know who'd been meditating for 60 years of his life. And he used to say about meditation, the more still the ponds, the smaller the pebble you need to make a ripple. So this was his reference about meditation. And he was a real sensitive because he had been meditating for 65 years.
There seems to be a common word here, vibration. And I think that's a key word when it comes to how we sense what Angelina's voice does with our insides. It transmits through that kind of vibration. And another thing, when you said those molecules were affected, is where you put some sand on a speaker or on a surface and you add sound and bass to it. It produces a lot of different patterns, which is very interesting how that can be.
What I said about the word religion, no two people will hear the same thing. And I think with language, we try to convey an experience to another person, but oftentimes we can never really put that person in our body and mind and say, see, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like we can't 100% do it. We do a fair job of it. And I think musicians and movie makers do a fair job of conveying something that they want people to share, that they're apparently hearing or seeing themselves.
Isn't that bordering on the concept of empathy, where we try to duplicate or we try and understand another person's feeling? How successful we are or not is a different issue. Our skin is such a strong border for our internal world that it's hard to sometimes get outside of your own skin. So, William, when you hear an Angelina Jordan recording, what does it trigger in you? Can you put it into words?
When I first heard her on America's Got Talent, was a combination of seeing her and hearing her. There was this hit. She seemed so grounded and so able to dwell within herself and not hyper or not all buzzed up about this stage and all these people and just like, oh, this is what's happening. Oh, this is what's happening the next minute. Oh, and the next minute this is happening, like a meditation teacher. And then she opened her mouth and it was like, oh, that happens just naturally too. Like this is what I do. Doesn't everyone? So I felt as though she's holding something, she's carrying something. They're open in some way. They're like a channel that something from another space just effortlessly flows through and out to the community. And it's just like continual giving. They were sent here, just channel this out. And that was my response to her, like, oh, okay. Just let's sit here and bask in this, whatever it is she's bestowing on us.
During my research here, I looked up on what Jung had said, and he has invented a whole range of expressions that we use today, like persona and archetypes. One of the archetypes is called divine child. And I read a little bit about that and it clicked. Is this what Angelina is?
Yes, I would guess that you could use that archetype to describe a lot of people's response to her. And for me, the icing on the cake is, does that ignite the connection to one's own divine child? So in her way, is she like carrying out this ministry?
Maybe that's why a lot of her fans cry when they hear her sing, because maybe it brings them back to their divine child. That would be an explanation that we have not heard before. Yeah.
That's your main objective. Freud's basic theory was that the unconscious is trash garbage heap of all the unwanted and feared and rejected and repressed memories or traits, which Jung called shadow, negative aspects of ourselves. And Jung broke with Freud. He said, no, the unconscious is a phenomenon of nature, just like the moon or the earth or a tree. And it works toward integration and balance. So if one part of us is off balance, it keeps sending up messages like, you need to pay some attention to this.
With that definition, William, I think Angelina Jordan would very much more be in the Jungian camp than the Freudian camp. She does not really deal with negativity as a currency, and she is much more into the concept of integration, where we should all get along together and we should all love each other. So in that sense, Angelina, maybe without even knowing it, is more Jungian than she is Freudian.
Oh, for sure. He teaches that that's our job. Person comes in with depression or anxiety, or maybe Freudian would be, well, we need to find a way to cure that and stop it, give you meds and restore you to your original mode of health. And Jung would say, no, that you're having that because the psyche's saying that there's something that needs attention and that needs to be brought up and looked at. And then once that's integrated, your consciousness, your psyche has been expanded. And that the more you can do that, the more you keep expanding your consciousness. And then you're able to more easily recognize what your purpose is, that we're called here to discover our myth. What purpose are here to live? And Jung said in all his years of work that the number one problem wasn't like depression or anxiety. They don't feel any meaning. They went to school, they learned how to make money, but it doesn't feel fulfilling. Everyone doesn't have to become Angelina, that we all can do it to the best of our ability. And for me, the Bible story of Jonah and the whale illustrates that very well, where Jonah is this normal person. And it's like he has this call from Yahweh, symbolized by a call from the unconscious. You're called to do something better or greater. You're going to be one of my prophets. He recognizes that that's like a big expectation. And he's kind of like, I don't know if I want to take that on. I don't want to have God up there evaluating, did you do a good job or not? So he says, I'm having a pretty nice life the way things are. Get somebody else. So he tries to run away from Yahweh in our language, deny your own unconscious. And we have many ways of doing that, drinking, using drugs. So he runs away. He gets on this boat and a big storm comes up. And then all the other passengers on the boat, they say, oh, he's running away from God and God's mad. He's causing the storm. He's going to get us all killed. You're not living up to your responsibility. It's our responsibility to the community. It's not just that we're required to fulfill our potential, but it's a public service to do it. If we don't do it, that's one less person in the world that's, so to speak. So Angelina is one of those people that just effortlessly came in here and she's doing it. I feel it's happening.
Yeah, there are so many people that has been affected by her calmness and sincerity. I know I was when I first heard her. It was also the AGT Bohemian Rhapsody, and I was feeling low, and it really picked me up. And I've used her music almost like a drug when I'm low to get back on track and just feel that it's okay, it's all right. There's no need for any anxiety. And she really has that soothing ability for me, anyway.
Let's see if we can find a song for William to listen to now, and then he can describe it either in psychological terms or spiritual terms or personal terms of how it moves him. What about Born to Die? Because that has spiritual and psychological implications. It's also very beautiful.
Yes, this is a cover of Lana Del Rey. In this setting, her mouth is hidden behind that big microphone, and it's very hard to connect. Is this really her singing? Because her voice is so mature and she's looking so young and innocent.
Also, with the subject matter and the lyrics, there's an existential quality to it, and so that is almost in your wheelhouse, William.
Feed on for me now. Take me to the finish line. Oh, my heart is raised every step that I take, but I'm hoping that the gates, they'll tell me that you're mine. Walking through the city streets, is it by mistake of design? I feel so alone on the Friday nights. Can you make it feel like home if I tell that you're mine? It's like I told you, honey. Don't make me sad, don't make me cry. Sometimes love is not enough and the road gets tough. I don't know why. Keep making me laugh. Let's go get high. The road is long, we carry on. We try to have fun in the meantime. Come and take a walk on the wild side. Let me hug your heart in the pouring rain. You're like a girl's insane. Choose your last words. This is the last time. 'Cause you and I, we were born to die.
Well, a couple things. I've heard her described as the girl with 1,000 voices, because you never know what sound. Yeah, it's very existential, and it seems that the music of this generation is quite existential. We don't know what the purpose of this life is. All we can do is just live each moment of it with as much presence as possible, but we don't really know if it has any meaning at all. But just let's try to do it. And I hear that a lot, that kind of existential quality in a lot of her contemporaries' music too. And her voice is like a band, and the bass, you could feel it in your chest
Yeah.
vibrating, that you could feel the bass.
That's very, very apparent in this register that she uses here, that the vibration is really coming through. She's famous for changing lyrics, making it age appropriate. And in the original, there's a line that says, kiss me hard in the rain. And she here sings, hug me hard in the rain instead, which is like, okay. But then again, she sings something of let's go and get high. So that's, I don't know, maybe they missed that one. I always find that funny that they changed one, but not the other.
Getting high is okay, but kissing is not.
Exactly.
Let me kiss you hard in the pouring rain. Let me hug you hard in the pouring rain.
So the existential spin on that song, does that vibrate more with your background as a Catholic priest or more as a Jungian analyst?
It would resonate more now with my life as a Jungian, because when I was a Catholic priest, I was so much younger than I am now. And so it wasn't the priesthood itself, it was the person in it who had no idea about a lot of things that I do now.
It's funny, I'm hearing a lot of Bob Dylan quotes. I just thought of the line, I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
And before, when you were speaking about Jonah, there's a line from a Bob Dylan song where God says, the next time you see me, you better run, which is a very ironic line coming from the Lord himself.
Next time you see me coming, you better run.
That was the Old Testament God, the Yahweh. That's who he pretty much presented himself as after Jesus' appearance, that humanizes it quite a bit more.
A lot of new reactors to Angelina, the first thing they say is she has an old soul. And then they go on to say something like, oh, she has lived many lives. And I think maybe that's not the right description of what she is. I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't think she's a reincarnation of Billie Holiday or something. But there is something about her intelligence, even at a young age, that is in this expression, old soul. Did Jung have anything to say about the human psyche matter?
He didn't really talk much about reincarnation in that sense.
Because I heard somewhere about he saying something about in each of us there's a 2 million-year-old man.
Yes.
Okay, what did he mean by that?
He taught that we all sit on the entire history of the species, which is what he called the collective unconscious. A lot of Jungian work is work with dreams. So trying to access what the unconscious is saying through dreams. And we try to determine, well, is this a personal dream? Is this something about your life that needs to be looked at? Or is this a collective dream? Is this a dream from the collective unconscious? He had some dreams that were prophetic dreams about the future, things, dreams like that. He often said that what we call civilization today is a thin veneer on top of that. Nothing much has changed, really.
Freud uses a word I really, really like called synchronicity, where two things are resonating with each other in harmony. And I think it's not a big leap to go from the word synchronicity to synthesize, where you have many different factors and you put them all together. And that to me is one of the explanations of why Angelina has such a unique talent, because she has such a wide net of different cultural influences, the Norwegian and the Japanese and the Persian and the American. And also she speaks many languages. and she has her granny, who is a poet and an artist as well. So she has a very rich, unusual combination of very strong factors. And when you put all that mixed together, you have a very unique artist.
You would have like a very rich tapestry of influences or realities to chime in or to pick from. I have this thing about the linear mind versus the holographic mind. And the linear mind is also often correlated with the Jungian influenced Myers-Briggs personality inventory, where it identifies various types of personality based on how they experience the world. And the linear mind is just from left to right. It's very logical. But then there's the holographic mind, which I've had at times. And the hologram is sort of infinite, and you can take one piece of that hologram, and that one piece still contains the whole hologram, theoretically. So the holographic mind is you hear one thing, like one note, or somebody shares a memory, and as soon as you hear that, the whole board lights up. So then you have that whole board of all these nodes of associations to pick from, which one tugs at you at that moment. And that came to mind as you described Angelina. She has that, she carries that around with her all the time. A person like that is quite gifted and quite lucky. I have another favorite, Grace VanderWaal, who also won America's Got Talent. And she does a lot of existential music. And growing up as a child star was very difficult for her. And she's coming to terms with a lot of it now. It's in her music.
Darkness tries to chase me.
I always worry about them. I guess that's maybe paternally. And I always say, I hope they don't get like chewed up in the music business. I feel like they're so fragile or so precious that I hope they are able to take care of themselves, because we've seen many examples of others comparably gifted, which may help us to understand why so many run from Yahweh, because for some it's too much. They couldn't deal with it. Like Robert Bly in his book Iron John, about the men's movement, and he talked about Marilyn Monroe, and she carried the goddess archetype. She just carried it for every man and woman in the country. And her constitution, her ego, her childhood, she just wasn't strong enough to carry it. He said that the archetype is bigger than the ego, and it killed her.
I thought of another song that fits into the theme of dreams and symbolism, and also the grieving side of life. And it's her original Million Miles. And that's another one we should look at and see what you think.
When I was a child, I walked the streets. They see me growing up, knew you were all I need. Had seen in myself through all the years. It's like it's in my tears. I think what is giving me the smiles and the memories, but now it's not here to hold my hand. In the light of the blue sky, I'm not alone to fight. I've never regret what I do. We're a million miles apart. It's pulling my heart like an empty bubble to be thrown out. I can't make it stop, but I know in my heart, I know that I'm never alone. I know that I'm never alone. I know that I'm never alone. Never alone. Never alone. No. You said I'm watching you from the moon. I'm everywhere, see everything you do. I can't see you, but I know you're here. It's like you're in my it takes. I think what is giving me the smiles and the memories, but now it's not here to hold my hand. In the light of the blue sky, I'm not alone to fight. I've never regret what I do. We're a million miles apart. It's pulling my heart like an empty bubble to be thrown. I can't make it stop, but I know in my heart, I know that I'm never alone. I know I'm never alone. I know that I'm never alone. I wonder when I close my eyes, are you in my dreams tonight? I wonder, are your friends the stars, the songs for you wherever you are? We're a million miles apart. It's pulling my heart like an empty bubble to be thrown. I can make it stop, but I know in my heart, I know that I'm never alone.
Quite poignant.
Yeah.
Is this about the death of a family member, her father?
Her grandfather.
And it was like released about the same time as the COVID. So a lot of people have been helped listening to this song in their grief.
That song touches on many bases because it's spiritual and it's psychological and it's emotional and it's personal. And so, especially her delivery and her impact, this song has many different meanings for many different people. So, in that sense, it's almost a universal song because it spans many different fields with how it's delivered and with the lyrics.
So universal to the human condition. The human condition is that we experience the loss of loved ones, of things, of beliefs, of situations, beliefs that things were certain ways and we find out that they're not. There's grief there. It's not despair. There's a self-soothing. There's I want you to know I'm okay. So it's also hopeful. And it feels like a prayer too.
Angelina doesn't do despair. I think the essence of her being is very buoyant and very optimistic. And her personality is simply not in her makeup to do despair. And you have to know her very well to realize that and to be able to articulate that. But a lot of people will realize that unconsciously. And that's why she has such a devoted fan base, because she doesn't do despair. And that counts for a lot. Especially because she's not preaching her lack of despair. It's just who she is and how she is.
I love the little reels, the little snippets you'll see on YouTube where she's maybe at a train station and there's a guy playing the piano and she's in her bare feet. And you think that the average person might think, well, what's this big star doing out by herself in a station carrying a backpack on her bare feet? And it's just so beautiful.
He left no time to regret. Kept his days wet with his same old same bed. In my head high, in my tears dry.
So, William, it was great to meet you and hear about your life experience and how all of that has layered upon your perception of Angelina Jordan, and to hear about the rich combination of Jungian psychology and spirituality. And we are all a little bit wiser from your words of wisdom. Thank you, William. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I've enjoyed so much meeting you two and hearing your take on Angelina. So I'm still learning and still watching, and will continue Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, think of this session, William, as us dipping you into the baptismal font.
Okay. I am baptized and initiated into
Yeah, okay,
the
so
church. Huh?
I know that a reference like that is easy for you to understand.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, William. Thank you.
I've seen the way, done it all, had my cake now. Diamonds brilliant and violet now. Hot summer nights in July, when you and I went forever wide. Crazy days, city lights, the way you play with me like a child. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful? Will you still love me when I got nothing but my aching soul? I know you will, I know you will, I know that you will. When I'm no longer beautiful, I've seen the world lit up as my stage now, channeling angels in the new age now. Hot summer days, rock and roll, the way you play for me and you show, and all the ways I got to know your pretty face, an electric song. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful? Will you still love me when I got nothing but my aching soul? I know you will, I know you will, I know that you will. Will you still love me when I'm no longer beautiful? Dear Lord, when I get to heaven, please let me bring my man. When he comes, tell me that you let him. Father, tell me if you can. Holy grace, all the body, all that face makes me wanna party. He's my son, he makes me shine like a diamond. Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful? I know you will, I know you will, I know that you will. Will you still love me when I'm no longer beautiful? Will you still love me?